Welcome back to Just Giants, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky fan, and we are back following another week of Giants training camp football. The Giants and the Texans had a game on Saturday, and we have some roster moves and injuries to cover. How are you, Cranky fan?
Well, my favorite Seinfeld episode is on tonight, The Big Salad, so that's making my Sunday night exciting. Um, just trying to mute out a lot of the noise that came out of that game Saturday afternoon, and you know, I think this is a good episode. We can kind of put everything in perspective of what we saw, what it means, why we're not overreacting, and kind of look ahead as we get to the third and final preseason game already. It's moving fast.
It is, and I thought there were a lot of positives to take away from that game, as well as plenty of negatives. So let's get into a couple of things before the game. There were some roster moves and that we didn't get a chance to cover, and some of it is worth discussing. I think Jordan Phillips being traded to the Cowboys with a 6th and 7th round pick swap is one of them. On that same day, Jalen Mills was cut as, I believe, injured. He had a calf injury, and I don't believe that he had practiced like at all. And Tyree Jackson was cut as well. They brought in some guys. We talked about some of them, like Lorenzo Lingard, but not many were super consequential, I don't think. But they did sign fullback Jakob Johnson, and I think that's consequential. So, a couple things first. Did you have any sort of reaction to the Giants and Cowboys making a trade?
Well, I always find it interesting how, like, oh, the Yankees and Mets can never make a trade. The Knicks and the Nets never make a trade. The Giants and the Jets, or the Giants and the Cowboys. It's, to me, any way you can improve your roster, you need to kind of explore and look into and execute if you can. And if you're cutting your pool of teams that you can deal with from 31 down to 28 or 27 because we don't like them, or they're our rival, or they live in the same building of us, I think it's silly. So, GMs are not fans. GMs are GMs, and they're looking to make deals. So I don't have any problem making trades with, I don't like when, like in baseball, for example, it's July 30th and I'm dumping players to my rival, like teams ahead of me for the playoffs. But this is, we're moving around pawns on a chessboard. I did see in this deal, though, where the trade was structured, that it's based on how many plays he'll play with Dallas. And if he doesn't, the trade gets voided or something. Do you know any more about the details about that?
I think the pick swap gets voided.
The pick swap. Okay.
Um, the way I see it, Jordan Phillips wasn't making this roster anyway, so I agree with you. The fact that it's the Cowboys means nothing to me.
Mhm.
You try and get something where you would otherwise cut somebody. So I have no issue there. I do think that it's interesting that Jordan Phillips had no pathway to the roster.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's a shocking thing to say either. But the interior of the defensive line was a concern for a lot of Giants fans coming into this year. You have Dexter Lawrence and Nacho and Jordan Riley, and then after that was kind of a bunch of question marks with guys like Ryder Anderson and DJ Davidson and Elijah Chapman, Casey Rogers, Timmy Horn. Not a lot of household names, and yet guys like Elijah Chapman have been very much impressing the coaching staff. He got first team reps with the defense and played most of this game with the Texans. Looked good in those games. They like DJ Davidson. They like Ryder Anderson. So it's almost, the acquisition of Jordan Phillips, I think, was because the front office also had some concerns about the interior defensive line, but they didn't end up needing him, is actually a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, you have more information, you have more data points, you have we're what, 80% done with training camp already, and you kind of see things are fitting into place.
Jalen Mills being waived injured is interesting. I'm not sure if this speaks to the severity of the injury, the amount of time that it's still going to take for him to be better, or what. But I thought that his addition was to get some, the front office has spent a significant amount of time getting veterans on this team, all along the offensive line. They got a veteran running back. They got veteran tight ends that block. They got, last year they got veteran defensive linemen. Last year they got a veteran linebacker. Um, and in the secondary, I thought Jalen Mills was going to be that veteran presence, but evidently not. And I do find that a bit interesting because they are very young in the back and shaky.
I think you hit it more about, the unknown about the injury. I think the injury plays more of a factor than anything else with this. Because you're right. If we're not really sure what's going on back there, and there was a veteran presence there, to pull the plug on him so early, tells me there's some other thing has to go on, and that kind of makes a little more sense to me.
Tyree Jackson being cut is not all that interesting, other than I think he looked pretty good in the first preseason game, which was, he had been looking good reportedly in camp. He looked good in the first preseason game, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But more interesting than that is they acquired a fullback, and I think they will fully intend to use him as a fullback. I think he's almost got a lock to make the roster so long as nothing happens to him injury-wise or off the field or anything like that. I think they made an acquisition to address a specific positional need that they were kind of shoehorning Daniel Bellinger or Jack Stoll or Chris Manhertz into, and I think they were just kind of done with that experiment. So,
Do you see it as any indictment at all on the offensive line to bringing in a real fullback?
absolutely not. I think
Okay.
what it is indicative of is that this. I'm going to kind of supplement this with what I've seen in the preseason as well. I think
Okay.
that this O line has looked very good. Uh, I think they've looked good running the ball. I think that the acquisition of Devin Singletary, um, and all the play calling that we've seen, we're going to see a lot more inside runs rather than outside runs. And I think
That's
that they are very much going to make that a reliant part of this offense, the inside run and then the play action off of it.
that was interesting you said that, because we're gonna get into the game in a minute, but I am, not as excited about how the run blocking was with the offensive line.
We'll get to
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's going to be a focus. They're done screwing around with runs off the edge.
Yeah.
I think
I
they're
don't think we
going
have
to
the
be
talent to do
calling
it.
those.
Yeah, we don't have a Saquon Barkley who has the potential to break out the outside and do something really good with it. I think.
I
I
don't
think
I
we
don't
we have more
nah.
meat we have more meat and potatoes runners, I think, than the
Who
dynamicness of a Barkley.
who other than Devin Singletary, who is the meat and potatoes runner?
Well, I mean, like, none of them have the explosiveness of a Saquon Barkley or the potential to take, bounce to the outside and go and gone.
But I don't think that's what Saquon Barkley's special talent was. I don't think it was his speed, and I don't think it was. I think it was his ability to make something out of nothing or make a defender miss in the open field. I
And I
don't
think
think
that
that.
I think it happens more off the edge than it does between the tackles.
Sure, but I don't think
That's
that
my
you
point.
need to have that to run off the edge. I think you
No,
just need speed to the edge. Is really all you need.
yeah.
And I think that I think that they have that. I just don't think that they're interested in that. I think that they're trying to just go up the middle. But we'll see. It is
Mhm.
preseason, so what they've been doing is not indicative of really of anything.
No.
But I
And that's a very important point to hammer home. Keep thinking that going through your ears when you're watching what's going on, even in the next preseason game, and as you go back and look at this past one too. That what you're seeing is really talent versus talent, as opposed to any sort of game planning or scheming or anything. So,
All right, so then let's get to this game here. Texans
mhm.
28, Giants 10. I really only focused on the first half because that's where we saw the starters. The defensive starters really kind of played for one drive, and then for the
Mhm.
most part, they were subbed out with some rotational guys like Elijah Chapman, who was in there with the ones, stayed in there. Bobby Okereke stayed in there. Some of the back seven guys stayed in there, like Jason Pinnock was in there for a little bit. But for the most part, they were out after the first drive. And then the starting offense was out there for the most part for all five drives in the first half. So that's what I paid attention to, took notes on,
Mhm.
etc. So let's start with the overall things. We'll get Daniel Jones out of the way.
Mhm. Well,
Shaky start, then settled in, right? Would you agree with that?
sure. And to me, the most important thing what I was really looking for is I didn't care about accuracy. I didn't care about, I wanted to see a quarterback where if I didn't know any better, is this like a guy who's coming back from an injury, physically, or was he skittish at all? And for me, I didn't see that quarterback, which made me feel good. I think the biggest part of this battle is going to be with Daniel Jones is, can this front office count on him being healthier as we go through this season as part of their evaluation of what they're going to do next year. And a lot of times you see a quarterback who's had a major injury and a big rehab coming back, and do they look like they're not quite themselves yet? Do they look like they're favoring something? Do they look like they're kind of working kinks out or things? Or also, do you see a quarterback who maybe seeing ghosts, or maybe just doesn't have that confidence back? And I didn't really see that on either physical or mental in it, and that kind of made me, that to me was the most important thing. Obviously we'll talk about the pick six and some of the throws, but how did you, as you three were watching the game, did you get any of that sense of you know not coming back 100%, like that type of thing?
No, not at all. And I think that that's a really sober point of view, is to, and I certainly didn't come into this game looking for that. I just wanted to see how he looked and
Hmm.
whatever. So, but I do think that that is an important step one for somebody coming back, is in the first live bullets action is, do you look skittish? Do you look hurt? And he looked neither to me. I mean, he ran up the middle on one play for 12 yards. He fell forward. He was comfortable doing that.
Yeah,
He
that was
looked.
the most important play for me, I think, was that, Daniel Jones' secret sauce is his legs, and wanting to see what, is he going to still take off when he needs to take off, and what was he going to do? I mean, I know this is a preseason game, I know it's meaningless, but he was ready to absorb a hit a bit, and maybe even almost like, ooh, be careful type thing, but that's okay. That the fact that he's even willing to run up the middle like that, absorb some sort of contact, says he's past a hump in his own head of where he is and his confidence level. And that to me was the most important play of the game for me, and my kind of my evaluation of him in the preparation for this year.
Yeah, and I think your point of view was probably the most down to earth and reality based way to look at it, and I think he passed those tests for sure. It's not
Hmm.
the barometer that I use going into it. But yeah, you're right. I thought that he looked. I don't know if I would say he looked confident, but he went out there kind of just guns blazing, and I think eventually he settled in.
Hmm.
And we can get into the fact that the, the Texans didn't play all of their defensive starters or Laramie Tunsil. And then really by the time Jones settled in, the backups were kind of in there, but
But
I think that's kind of neither here nor there
yeah,
with the
let's
first
let's
game
let's get
back.
let's get into Daniel Jones' head for a minute. He had two pretty big injuries last year. He's had a history. Yeah, these guys, they read the papers, they're on Twitter, they know the noise that's out there, they know the situation, where they stand. And this is not a question about, you know hey, are we sure he's just, should he really be the starter this year? We're not talking about that at all. He is our starting quarterback next, in game one against Minnesota. But the questions are going to be, there's these lingering doubts, and I thought I thought he came out. He didn't look like a guy who's trying to test anything, or came out just, let me make sure I can do this. And again, I think this is when you're coming back from a major injury, you have to kind of crawl, then walk, then run. And that's why we have preseason, folks. This is crawling and walking time. So, and I think, one of the check marks that we both had before this season was going to start was, how are we going to approach this preseason? And I'm giving Dable a lot of kudos, because I feel like we are ramping up towards a starting the season week one, like we're ready to play, we're ready to win games. And I think Daniel Jones kind of came out like that as well.
100% agree. I think that Dable has done a lot of self evaluation. I think that the front office has done good self evaluation, and they've followed through on changing things up, and I'm a fan. of
Mhm,
everything that they've done. We'll get to the injuries at the end of this,
mhm.
but I'll just preface without really getting into it. I think the injuries that we've sustained are absolutely worth, being ready week one because
Mhm. It's
you
gonna
you
happen.
have to be in game shape.
Yeah.
Now let's get into Daniel Jones as a thrower because
Yes.
if you went into this with the mindset of trying to see what the starting offense is going to look like, which I think a lot of people did, it's what I did too. Um, you wouldn't come away being too pleased with some of this. So, the opening drive, first play looked completely scripted and like nobody was doing anything else except running through the script because
Mhm,
man, I think it was Derek Stingley jumped the route, completely
mhm.
undercut it, and almost came away with a pick. Should have come away with a pick. But then after that, it. I didn't think it looked too bad. So he had a screen out to Theo Johnson. He tried to hurdle a guy, but he, otherwise got some good yardage. And then Malik Neighbors had a drop straight up. You know what I mean? Not an easy catch, a difficult catch, but Malik Neighbors dropped the ball. So it wasn't really horrendous, but you know,
Well,
some rust, some
yeah,
preseason.
I think it was more, execution poor, idea good. And I
Sure.
think that's I think, the execution will get there. I think that throw to Neighbors and also some other throws to Neighbors throughout the game lets me kind of believe that this coaching staff knows he's a special receiver. And they are going to draw up plays and things that he can do that most other receivers couldn't do, and no receiver that they've had since this coaching staff has been with this team. That first catch would have been great if he did catch it. It would have been, a potential highlight film if he did, but no other giant, I don't think, on that wide receiver we have is making that catch either. And
Yeah, I sure, but that's a catchable ball. I mean, I don't know. I've seen Isaiah Hodgins make catches. That third play was not that serious. He could have caught that.
yeah, but you see my point though, is that they are counting on him. And I think they have the confidence in him to make plays that you know, would be tougher for, the average receiver on this team.
Yeah, tougher, but I mean, that was just a window shot. He really just, one armed it, couldn't haul it
Yeah,
in.
I know, but you're missing my point.
No,
That
I'm not. I get your point. I think
yeah.
also they tried to script a first drive that would be that would help Daniel Jones settle in. So like I
Mhm.
think that a lot of this drive and using Malik Neighbors was to let him get settled, let him get comfortable, and let everybody kind of settle down.
And I think that's a win that comfort blanket, that security blanket already is the best receiver on the team.
Sure.
And that, it's that's something where, even something like, Odell Beckham couldn't do in the beginning because of his injuries or something is where he's establishing that relationship and that compatibility and that chemistry early on. So if that's the guy they want to make Daniel Jones, as he's working his way back into, all the rust off of a major injury, I'm glad it's him that they're doing these things for. That's a positive, big
Sure.
positive.
Absolutely. Second drive is where we get the bad pick six. And really, you can see. I mean, this is a series of bad decisions by Jones. Um, where he pump fakes, he actually should have thrown the ball. You're not getting much out of that play, but you just throw
Mhm.
it then because that's the time. After the pump fake, you have the safety or linebacker, DB, whoever it is, closing in on Theo Johnson. And now you also have the blitzer closing down on you. You can't take the sack in the end zone. You got to throw it away. And then instead of throwing it away, he just kind of threw it at the knees of Theo Johnson. And then it was a DB. It was Derek Stingley. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah.
Jumped in and took that one. Or no, it was Jalen Petrie, safety.
Yes.
He jumped the route and just took it to the house. That just can't happen. That was just a sloppy, silly, goofy, rough that they just
That's a
can't
rookie
happen.
mistake. That's a bad backup mistake. I
Yes.
mean, we've had a couple of guys who've been starting on this team for the last 3 or 4 years because of injuries. Who that's a mistake they would make.
Right.
But I am going to put an asterisk by that and say, is that a decision Daniel Jones would do in a real game, or is that just something where this is still preseason? You want to replicate as much as you can what you're doing in the regular season, in the preseason, but I'm just going back to the history of Daniel Jones, where I'm trying to think how many times on this hand he has made a completely boneheaded decision play like that. And I don't have that many that I can immediately come off the top of my head. And it made me think about, are we just jumping all over Daniel Jones because everybody just is looking for reasons? I mean, I could think back to Eli Manning for, the final at least third of his career doing something like this occasionally. Just
I would
like
say regularly enough where you'd shake your head.
what the hell are you doing, Eli? What was that type of thing? Like just a ridiculous decision, a bad pick six in there. So, we I think a lot of Giant fans, I think Giants media is just looking for the aha, this guy, he sucks. He's the worst quarterback in the league. That why didn't they offer more for Drake May? Let's look at the mock drafts for next year. Let's start watching Carson Beck and watching Georgia games this year. But it's like, you know, if this game is done in a real game, if this game is done, you know, week 6, week 7, week 10, week 13, yeah. But I don't want this season. And I don't want every game, every quarter, every series, every snap to become a referendum on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones in this season is going to be our quarterback, barring injury. Nothing is going to change. He's not getting benched for being bad. He has no history of being bad enough to be benched. And it's going to be, to me, very tiresome and very boring to go through the state of Daniel Jones for next year on every throw that's made. And some of you people are going to do that. I am not doing it on this show. Grump, I think I speak for you also. You probably don't want to do that either. So let's just, take in Daniel Jones and let's just see what happens. We'll assess and certain, markers during the season, but making it, a referendum for every throw is going to make me insane.
The only other, so yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to add to that.
Good.
The following drive, they had a solid drive moving down the line, and then you have a go ball to Jalen Hyatt that gets picked as well. And it was, I was on the Talking Giants stream. I think we said it 2 or 3 times. I've seen other people say it. You can live with that one. That's a different kind of interception, and it's true in a vacuum, in a game, if that's the only pick and you're otherwise pushing the ball downfield. I mean, it's like it was a bad throw that was on the inside shoulder and should have been up high, and on the outside shoulder, it was also Jalen Hyatt not attacking the ball allows a DB to undercut the route. So I mean, it's not just on Jones, but the fact of the matter is that it didn't exist in a vacuum. You had it with the near pick on the first play, and then you had it with the pick six on the second drive, the second play of the second drive. So I'm not surprised that people jumped all over him for that. And again, if you were looking to see what the starting offense was going to look like, it was fair to come away from these first 3 drives and be like, well, it's not going to look very good, is it? And that's totally fair. But perhaps that isn't the perspective you should have had, that I should have had. But again, I do agree with you. Daniel Jones has made some bad plays. He has missed things. The list of negatives from Daniel Jones could be restated several times, but something that he doesn't typically do is a completely boneheaded throw like he did with the pick six. You're right. So I can safely kind of file that away for later and be like, I hope I don't see more of this.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of let it go. I can let the other interception go, and I want to kind of get into the 4th and 5th drive as well, though.
Real quick before we do that, from the 3 of yours opinion, that other pick, the second pick, was that a bad decision or just a bad throw?
No, it's just bad throw.
That's
like I said, it was like 75% bad throw, 25% bad job by Jalen Hyatt to just kind of, you can see it, like he just kind of puts his arms up ready to get the ball, and he allows a total pathway but again, a better throw, and that's totally fine.
And so. I can totally live, and I am totally living throughout this entire preseason. If something is poor execution, that's okay. It's just preseason.
Yes.
I expect execution to get to a, and that's why, again, I'm going back to Dable, is we're building up so this execution is game ready on game one. I don't expect this team to come out and be like, oh my God, this this team is the undefeated Patriots after week one in a preseason. No, that's unrealistic expectation. Yeah, I'd love to see that be, be a completion. Yeah, I'd love to see, that, but I understand what this is where we are. So
I wanna I want to jump ahead to the fourth and fifth drive for Daniel Jones because we saw much more settled in Jones. The fourth drive is where we saw pretty much like a couple checkdowns, some running plays, and then a 45-yard bomb to Darius Slayton. Again, not a 100% perfect ball, but a very good one. One that could be
97%. We'll take that.
yeah, I mean, I'll say 90%. It being on the back shoulder instead of the forward shoulder, a better DB might close in on that and break that up. But again, fourth drive, we're playing against backups. So, and Darius Slayton did a very good job to catch that over the shoulder, adjust to the ball. He tempoed his speed to make that happen. That was a good but just saying that it's not a perfect throw does not mean in any way that I'm trying to be negative or overly criticize. It was a good ball. And then in the fifth drive, you see Jones much, much more settled in. Couple strikes over the middle, one to Wan'Dale Robinson, one to Malik Neighbors. Then you had a Neighbors amazing catch on the sideline, high pointing the ball over the DB. Hyatt nearly had a one-handed catch on the sideline, just couldn't get both feet in bounds. This was a much more comfortable Jones. And
they felt like different throws on that drive. It felt like there was a lot more going to the back shoulder. And I even texted you during that. I'm like, is this intended, or are these just kind of, bad throws? And you're like, this is intended.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say so. And, against backups for sure, but I think that this was important for Daniel Jones to get all of these reps under his belt. And I think that before we get into the rest of the starters on offense and before we get into the defense, which won't take nearly as much time as we did on Jones, but I think that the starters on offense for sure, probably the defense, I think the starters on offense should play the entire first quarter this Saturday against the Jets.
100% agree.
The way I see it, the offensive line, the starters on the offensive line still have not played together as a group. I'd like to see that. If you don't want to put the wide receivers out there for the whole first quarter, the starters, I'm cool with that. But I think that Jones needs the whole first quarter. I think that the offensive line needs the whole first quarter. I think you need to continue to build, continue to ramp up. Don't take your foot off the gas. I don't think that they need to do another half. Probably not. But I think that they should continue to play into the third game. You agree with that?
Agree 150%.
Okay. Because I have a feeling people will disagree.
I also think they should play even more than a quarter. I think we need to ramp up and build up more. One quarter could maybe be two series only, the way a quarter can go, or something.
I mean, you can also. I'm saying 1 quarter / 3 series.
Yeah, I would like to see 3 to 4 series for sure.
All right, let's get to the O-line because I'm a little bamboozled by something you said. But for starters, I think we can agree Jones actually had a pocket pretty much on. I mean, yeah, the pick six. One guy broke free. I think that was a tight end that failed to secure that block on like a cutback block or a peel block or something. And that blew up that play, and then Daniel Jones had his bad decision-making. But otherwise, it looked like Jones had a mostly clean pocket, or at least a pocket he could step up into. And this was an O-line that had Aaron Stinney playing in at left guard over John Runyon, who is hurt. And I think JMS did not play for the entire 5 drives. So I think there was some Austin Schlottman, I think, jumped in there for one.
Yeah, I think he was scripted, I think, to have like 15 plays. I think he ran like 14 or something.
Okay. Yeah. So the pass blocking looked excellent to me.
Yes. And I don't care if you're going against a first team or a second team. A lot of it is execution against anybody. If you don't have the right leverage, the right footwork, you just miss somebody. I don't care who you're going up against; they're going to beat you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to get our starting five together and playing as a unit more. But those reps are meaningful, and I was pleased. And I wasn't worried about who was against them because, again, that defense, and they're also not doing anything exotic or anything. They're just trying. It's man on man,
Right.
and just seeing a man on man doing your job is encouraging. And maybe it's a low bar that I'm encouraged by, but it's something to build on.
Well, I mean, I heard this as well. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, just a vanilla defense, though. It's like, okay, I can't help that. I can't help that
Mm,
that's what the preseason is. The point is that if that's all it is, then I want to see them lock it up.
yeah.
And they allowed only one pressure. So, I mean, that is what you want to see.
We saw an offensive line last year against vanilla defenses not be able to do their job.
Sure.
So, let's baby step this thing. Let's, you know, temper expectations and also be realistic with our expectations. Let's see a unit do enough on pass blocking where we can start honestly evaluating Daniel Jones and evaluating these receivers.
I thought that they run blocked very well as well. There was only one negative play, which was a run blitz off of the edge that was unblocked, and then went for a 4 yard loss. And otherwise, everything else was positive plays. The shortest of which were two 2 yard runs, which one of which was on a 3rd and 2, and then the other one was I think the play right before the pick six. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure where you were unimpressed with run blocking.
I don't know. I want to see some more like actual holes and things and building something. I just didn't. I just thought it was very just like yardage that these running backs they're gonna have to earn as opposed to, oh, there's a seam, there's a bit of a hole, there looks like an offensive line that's maybe controlling line of scrimmage a little bit. And again, not the full unit. We're still working into it, but I'd like to see it improving as we go along for sure.
Okay.
I'm not calling it out like, oh my God, we better look at the waiver wire right now and get 5 new offensive linemen because it's we're gonna have minus 50 yards rushing a game. But relative to how I was pleased by the pass blocking, that was the lagging part of the unit.
I Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And
I guess
and I
I
feel and
just I
I might be a little
disagree.
harsher than probably need to be, but that's just how I came off from it.
I just want to see.
I didn't lose any sleep last night because of it, but
No, I just want to
yeah.
see. So, like, Devin Singletary did average only 2 yards per carry,
Hmm.
20 yards on 10 attempts. But again, like, he also had a 1 yard run on a 1 yard touchdown play. So, I
Right,
mean,
but
that's always going to bring that
it
down.
was also his second attempt from the one, right?
It was, but no, it was the second attempt. The first was from the two, one
Okay,
yard, then one
from the
yard. So,
two.
so yeah, but and then, like I said, there's only one negative play. So I mean, I don't really know what run blocking you wanted to see. You know, Eric Gray had 18 yards on 3 attempts, so he averaged 6 yards per carry. I thought that the run blocking was good. I have no issues with that. I would say that it's hard to compare to last season when it was pretty clear defenses were keying in on the run game.
Yeah, we
But it
can't.
just it
Yeah.
didn't look. I can't remember the last time I looked at a Giants offensive line and said these are good run blockers. Maybe no, I can't. I can't remember the last time I really thought that. So maybe my bar is just lower than yours.
That might be on this. And again, my bar isn't super, super high either. I think it's just, let's see these guys next week against the Jets, and let's see if it's a little better. But
And that's going to be a big test too. That's
mhm,
something we're not really going to talk too much about because it's all the way on Saturday and we're
right.
recording this Sunday night. But Jets have an excellent, excellent defense and a really good starting offense. So this whole Saturday is going to be a I'm hoping that our starters play for a couple of drives on both sides of the ball because I think it's a really, really good test on a team that we're
And
not going to play this year. So.
something, I'm very happy with the three teams that we placed this year in preseason, and also having
Me too.
those extra practices against Detroit because iron sharpens iron.
Hmm.
And if you're running the motions against if we play New England on one of the preseason games or something, it's like, okay, well, that's fine. I mean, these are teams, these are three teams that have aspirations to
All
go
three,
places.
all three of them are Super Bowl like bets.
Sure.
I think
Sure.
all of them would be an okay Super Bowl bet.
Sure. Absolutely.
Um, all right, so let's flip to the defense. I
Hmm.
was medium on the defense, some concern, some optimism. So some of the concern is CJ Stroud and that offense, sans Laramie Tunsil, marched right down the field
Hmm.
twice. So I think that when I looked at it, though, there were a lot of very quick passes. So this seemed like a secondary thing. Um, some positives. I thought that the edges collapsed really well. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Kayvon and Burns bookending
Yep.
each other.
Hmm.
I thought that Elijah Chapman looked like he fit right in with the ones. I think that they got a steal right there. He drew a holding penalty against the
Hmm.
starters in the red zone. The linebackers were getting worked in this against this offense. They really tried to hit the middle of the field on the quick throws, but I didn't think that the linebackers played bad. I thought McFadden got into space pretty well. He made every tackle he needed to make. Only once really did he get kind of, he just got beat to the edge, and I think it was like maybe like a 10-yard play, but he still made the tackle. I thought that Deontay Banks played pretty well. He got beat early, but otherwise played well in the red zone. They had a goal line stand. And last note I have is that Tyler Nubin also drew a
Hmm.
blitz, drew a hold on a blitz play. So it just seemed to me that a lot of the holes were in the secondary. They
Hmm.
just it's a deep receiving core with the Texans and a good passer.
I saw something that kind of scared me, and I really don't want to see much of the rest of this year. Is the Isaiah Simmons as a nickel? That kind of scares me out there.
I think the experiment's done. I mean,
I hope so too.
I don't like it, but I mean, this was also Drew Phillips was not there,
Hmm.
so they were
But
kind of experimenting. I think he's really going to be the third linebacker on
I,
passing.
I, I think,
He's the dime guy, covering a
yeah.
tight end, blitzing, or otherwise in zone
I
coverage.
mean, they had been practicing it quite a bit though, haven't they? During training camp of having
They
him.
they have, but I just don't think that it's the kind of thing that they're going to do if Drew Phillips is out there.
Sometimes when you see one play and that's all you need to see, and it's like I don't need to see that ever again. That was the case with
Well,
me.
remember, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of Isaiah Simmons in general. There was a
Hmm.
strong contingent of Giants fans that wanted him drafted in like the top 15. They didn't draft him, and everyone raved about his coverage ability plus his abilities. I did not see somebody that was in college where Isaiah Simmons did play out on the edge a whole bunch. That means nothing to me. Playing in the ACC, whatever you do there is not the NFL. I didn't see
Hmm.
somebody that had the coverage skills to be a safety. You know, I saw a linebacker cover with good coverage skills, someone that could cover tight ends pretty
Hmm.
well,
Hmm.
and run blitz and all that kind of thing. I thought he gave you maybe a little bit more versatility in his coverage ability, but I didn't see this Swiss Army knife. So I don't love it. I honestly think that as long as he's only on the field to cover a tight end or otherwise blitz, I'm cool with that. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, I hate it. And what's really bothering me is this slot corner position is killing me because it really makes no sense that Darnay Holmes is just like not on this roster. I don't understand. And I think that he is, if Andrew Phillips didn't immediately play better than I expected him to, I would tell you that he's the best slot corner on this roster is Darnay
Hmm.
Holmes, and he's getting like no snaps whatsoever. I think he's as good as gone, unless for some reason he's doing well on special teams. But he's certainly not getting the defensive snaps, and I just don't get why. I don't particularly love Darnay Holmes, but I'm just looking at the roster and unless they plan on doing like a waiver wire thing for the slot position, I don't I don't love the idea of Isaiah Simmons behind. Uh,
Is he injured at all, or is there anything going on with
nope,
him?
nope.
No.
They just
They-
don't like him, and I think that I don't know where Cordell Flott has been hurt, so we don't know where he sits with the slot position as well or the outside. I would have thought that behind Phillips would be Nick McLeod in the slot,
Mhm.
but he has pretty
Mhm.
much taken the cornerback two reps, and maybe the move really is that they get an outside corner on the waiver wire to be cornerback two, and they rotate McLeod back
McLeod over.
into the backup slot. Maybe that's the move.
Yeah, I don't know. I it doesn't make any sense either. I that's why I was asking, is he hurt or something going there? Because
No, because he's on the team for special teams. He's on the field for special teams. I mean,
yeah. So if they don't like him, why even bother carrying him still? That's like
yeah, I don't know. And they
should have gone for
re-signed
pot with
him
him.
this year.
Yeah, exactly. And
I
they
don't
didn't. It's
understand.
not like they inherited him and said, "We have this guy we got to carry." This regime re-signed him.
Um, I didn't think that there were too many people that really stood out that were like, oh wow, he had a great game. He's definitely made a case for the roster. Those guys, I think, have already, like I said, Elijah Chapman played a whole bunch of the game. He did well with the ones. He looked like he belonged. He had a hustle play later on. I could mention him, but I think that one's almost bona fide at this point.
I think even before today he was, or
That's what I
yesterday he
mean.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, the only other person I can think of is the defensive back Alex Johnson. I thought had a pretty good game with the twos and threes. So we'll see if maybe they certainly need bodies back there. So that's something. Um,
So let me ask you then. Now that we've gone through two of the three games so far, in your kind of internal clock or your timeline, how are you feeling we're progressing, getting ready towards week one? Before we started camp, we both said what our goals were for this training camp. Do you feel where we are right now, we're kind of right on schedule? Do you like what you're seeing overall? Maybe don't not even worried about execution wise, by just as we're getting closer to opening kickoff, or you feel like this team is getting ready at the pace you want it to be?
I'd say that they're like 80% on the schedule that I wanted. And I think that the only real gripe I have is that schedule I think was delayed based on like health related reasons.
Hmm.
I think that I would have liked this rust shake off game for the starters to be the first game. I would have liked the second game to be the one that looked a little bit more coordinated. And then
Hmm.
I would have liked the third game to be a let's just make sure that we are continuing to look good and then let's find the end of our
Let's do a
depth.
walkthrough and get out.
But
Yeah.
I can't complain about that because it seems to be that everything else that I would want in a training camp is happening this training camp. They're taking it seriously. They're going hard. The joint practices with the Lions I thought were physical. I thought the game was physical. I thought that they are moving in the correct direction. I personally am ambitious and a little bit ahead of my skis. I should have looked at Daniel Jones's injury as more serious. Just because he was moving well in practice doesn't mean enough. So I'm comfortable with what I've seen. I know the limitations are as expected. I'm worried about the secondary, but I can live with it this year. My goals were to see an offense that moved the ball and
Yep.
scored points. I like what I see from the offensive line. I like what I see from our running back room. I think that they have three very good options running the ball. That makes me happy. I like the offensive line giving Daniel Jones time. I think that that's the most you can hope for in this season. Again, I'm not going to sit here and evaluate the quarterback. We know for the most part what Daniel Jones is capable of, and the situation they were in, replacing him was not really totally a viable option. So I'm not really looking at that. I'm looking at wide receivers that can be explosive, and I'm seeing
I,
that. So I'm seeing a
that
lot of the things I need to see. Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. I think with neighbors, I'm seeing the potential for two things. One, I think you can create something big out of nothing, and I think they can try to go for it and get more bigger chunk plays with him. I think he could potentially be a mismatch in a guy who makes plays that you don't expect or anticipate to make. And I think, you know, this is a hard league to score points, and you have to be able to score points very quickly. And like, not if every drive has to be 11 plays and 80 yards and 6 first downs to get there, you're not going to be successful. You have to be able to have that, you know, 3 plays, 75 yards, and one was a 55-yard, either a 55-yard touchdown or a 55-yarder to get us into the red zone and we score or something. And I think neighbors, alone, I think changes that kind of calculus that we can be more likely to do things like that and get the quick scores. So, and again, nothing happened with him on Saturday that was like, wow, look at that 90-yard bomb play. But just I see, I see what I saw in college. Just that type of guy who can you know, tilt the field in our favor type of thing for that. So,
I mean, I see everything I need to see. Where if
mhm,
he becomes dominant, that he requires two defenders on him, then the explosive plays can come more to Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt.
mhm,
I think Wandale Robinson is the most likely on this entire roster to make somebody miss. I think that as long as he's got only one guy on him, he is pretty reliable to make the catch and be like a 50% chance he's going to make the first guy miss and get more out of everything. So Neighbors just has to continue being Neighbors. He just has to
yeah,
keep showing up on highlight film. I need him to be the defense's number one worry. I think that they have already built up a roster of other weapons to feed off of that attention. Saquon
mhm,
Barkley just. I'm not trying to. I shouldn't do this because I'm not trying to make this like Barkley bait and have Giants fans foam at the mouth for this. But the fact of the matter is that Saquon Barkley attracting that attention didn't help. You know, if more guys were going to crowd the box and we were going to throw the ball
it could have
as
been
a
Barry Sanders. It could have been
but
Jim Brown. It's like
my
it's the
point
nature of the
is
game,
my
the
point is
position.
that
Yeah,
my point is that with Neighbors seeking the attention, it actually opens up other people. With Barkley seeking the attention, it still crowds the line of scrimmage and it
right,
still makes throwing the ball hard.
100%.
So
Right.
unless the defensive philosophy is to overwhelm the offensive line and force Daniel Jones to just make bad decisions or rush throws or something, I think that they are set up for as much success as they could possibly have with this roster. I feel pretty comfortable with all of the moves that were made, and I feel decently comfortable with the progress that they've made so far. So, um, you know,
I agree with just about everything you said, but I'm also going to add to that that doesn't that until I see it on the field in real games, I still
well, I still haven't seen it, so
I know I'm still am not very optimistic for a lot of wins this year. I think two things can be true at once. I think we're setting ourselves to optimize what we have, but I just don't know what we have is enough to really make a very serious impact on a playoff push as of this point.
yeah, I'm not even thinking about that. I just
No, well, because at the end of the day, most people are going to be like, well, the bottom line is you won 4 games or you won 12 games or whatever.
yeah, but
And
that wasn't my objective going into this, so that's not really part of the equation. Um,
right.
I like I said, I just wanted to see an offense that was going to score points that looked like an NFL. And I haven't seen that yet, but I've seen a lot of the ingredients in one
Hmm.
place, and maybe we just need to stir the pot a little bit.
I think they just need to, I think you keep working through the final 2 weeks of training camp and the execution will come. I think that's a lot of it.
Last thing, injuries. They are starting to stack up quite a bit here, but I do think that they are taking them seriously and that not all of these are game level injuries.
Hmm.
But Micah McFadden left with a groin injury. Deontay Johnson didn't play because of an ankle injury. Matthew Adams didn't play due to a leg injury. Gunnar Olszewski did not play due to a groin injury. Ryder Anderson left with a hamstring. Dante Miller was nursing a hamstring injury and pretty much just rested. John Runyon did not play due to a shoulder. Andrew Phillips did not play, and Yadni Kajus left with a foot injury.
And
Um,
Lott didn't play.
and Locke did not play. That's
Right.
correct. So nothing too. I mean, like the most serious ones were Tyrone Tracy didn't play, sustaining the
Right.
low ankle sprain slash death. Was they brought him to the hospital and freaked everyone out, and then Malik Neighbors did play despite an ankle sprain.
And look, none the worse to wear either.
Yeah, absolutely. You would never know that that man was
Yeah.
hurt like a week ago.
I mean, of all those injuries, the one that was to me, if it wasn't the most serious, but the most kind of impactful was I would like to see Runyon out there to see
Yeah, of
like that,
course.
to
Yeah.
see that offensive line. And, you know, his health is much more important for a week one than it is for preseason two.
Hmm. Yes.
So that was just kind of like a disappointing, not that I'm concerned about his health, but just like we lost a week of having the five guys together. And even if it's 15 snaps or 12 snaps, you know, we hope for the best that we can get these five guys in next week. for any amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say John Runyon, Micah McFadden. That's a big one. We'll have to monitor that one.
That was a weird injury too, because it looked like he just got racked in the nuts, and
It did, but
then he
then
goes up on the cart. I mean,
yeah,
I've been punched in the chiclets before, and you know, I know what it feels like, but I've never been to the point of like I need to be carted off somewhere.
sure. And I would say Andrew Phillips was a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, everyone's important on the team, but everybody else, I would say, is not gonna make me shake in my boots.
Right.
I really, really, really would like to see like 3 or 4 drives with the 5 starting O linemen on Saturday. I think that's super important. I want to see John Runyon next to John Michael Schmitz and next to Greg Van Roten and bookended with Jermaine Illuminator and Andrew Thomas. I need to see that. I need them to get working together. Yeah,
I think they need to see it. Forget us. They need to see it. They need to work together. They need to, they need to gel. I mean, we have how many different starters from last year now? We have 3.
yeah.
That's a pretty big turnaround.
Well, yeah, 3.
Yeah, that's a lot of changeover on an offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And also, also with a new offensive line coach, and also a new guy who's calling plays. There's a lot of change that's going on, and all that change hitting you at once. You need reps.
Absolutely. I just need to see it. I think that they need it, so I need to see it. So that's going to do it for this episode. We will have another one after the Jets game, unless that there is some breaking news or something major, and we might see that. There is some pre-cut down roster shenanigans that is likely to take place this week throughout the league. So be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Just Giants Pod for any breaking episodes. Or you could also like this, subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube, and you will just get those in your feed every day. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter as well at @football_grump and at the Cranky Fan for updates throughout the week as well.
And thanks also to Bobby and Justin at
oh yeah,
Talking
definitely.
Giants for having Grump on, because the 3 of you are, I watched the game. The hardest part for me watching this was getting the sound, like the feed and my my DirecTV in complete sync, but it really,
that's just kind of the nature of live streaming. It's never going to be perfect.
But once we got there, though, I mean, I don't need to hear the cheerleading of our the Giants broadcasting crew. I'd rather listen to 3 guys who actually probably know more about the Giants and the X's and O's than the guys we have on TV. So you guys did a great job, and thanks to them to having you on there, because I think the 3 of you, that 3-man tag team is really good. So
yeah, I appreciated that. Yeah, thanks to them. That's always a bunch of fun, and they always do a lot to shout us out. So
yeah, very appreciated, guys.
Thanks. And we will see Justin Pennick in L16 week 1, just a couple of weeks away.
Holy jeez, yeah. Hopefully, knock on wood, the flight's on time Sunday morning. So
yeah, you better be there, man. I'm gonna be pissed if you're not.
Me too.
All right, that's going to do it. We will see you guys next week. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.